The Chariton Valley Story.
I am Ray Klingon-Smith. I helped to start Chariton Valley Association in 1982. Chariton Valley Association to help my son, who we discovered was disabled when he was 4 years old. Kurt was born at the hospital down in Macon because we were just in the process of moving from Macon to Kirksville at the time. He was 10 days late in arrival, so he was overweight and he weighed 10 pounds, which made it very difficult delivery for my wife. But she recovered and he seemed healthy and everything was okay. We didn't see any signs of illness for 2 years. He was learning to talk and acting normally and so on. At the age of 2 years, he started having sessions where he would just sit on the floor, motionless, for 2, 3, 4 minutes. He was having a seizure, but without any movement of body parts, but he would just sit there. So we knew something was wrong, and we were referred to a neurologist in Columbia, and took him down there for a year. They gave him medication but couldn't diagnose the disease that was causing the problem. At the end of a year, the medication wasn't stopping the seizures. So we asked to be referred to a neurologist in St. Louis who specialized in youth cases. And we took him to St. Louis, and the doctor there evaluated him and said, well, he'd have to spend a week in the hospital for the proper diagnosis. And I thought that was unusual and unnecessary. And so we came home, and I had a doctor friend here, Dr. Howard Hunt, who helped me get an appointment at the Mayo Clinic when Kurt was 4 years old. Spent a week up there with interviews and tests and all of that sort of thing, and at the end of the week, they told us that he had tuberous sclerosis. Just more and more seizures as he grew up, and mental retardation.
3 months later.
3 months after we had been there, and we took him back up, and they hospitalized him for 2 or 3 days and did more observations. And this time that world's leading doctor on tuberous sclerosis came in and took care of him. And so they didn't really offer any suggestions about how he might be improved. They just were concerned about controlling those seizures. As we went on, he lost totally his ability to speak. He cannot talk at all, still cannot. It took us 2 years of searching to find the problem, but it was identified, and the prognosis was very unfortunate. We did start looking when we got that diagnosis. First of all, Kurt didn't go to school when he was 6 years old as other students. When he was 7 or 8, the school started sending a teacher out to work with him at our house, and she was so good. She said, well, I could handle Kurt in my class, which surprised us. He started riding they had a special school bus, took him to school, and he was in Sheila's class and just did amazingly well. That was the only service that we had available here in town, Kirksville. I went through the regional center. I knew the manager and the assistant manager, and I guess the head nurse at that time, Dee Troster. And they were very helpful, but the state was going through a transition from providing services to buying services, to providing funding for services. And so we knew that if we wanted any services here, we would have to start our own. I sent Kurt's records down to Woodhaven Center in Columbia to evaluate to see if he would qualify. That was when he was 5, 6 years old. And on my way home from Jeff City one day, I stopped to talk with them about what had they found in the paperwork. And what they told me was that Kurt was qualified for their preschool program, but there was a 5-year waiting list, and that by the time he waited out the 5 years, he'd be too old for the program. So on the way home, I decided, got to do something in Kirksville. That's when I started working with the regional center staff. They were wanting to start services. And lo and behold, this is 1982, Sheila Daniels had a proposal. She worked there at the regional center. She had a proposal she wanted to pursue to start a preschool program for children with the developmental disabilities, preschool. And so we decided that was a very viable program, that we would support that, and she could provide the leadership and we'd provide the organization. So we applied for the grant, and it was a total of $40,000 to operate that for 1 year. And we had to raise $10,000, and the state would then give us a grant of $30,000 if we were selected. So we worked and managed to raise $5,000 here, but didn't know how we were going to get the other $5,000. My neighbor had asked me to speak to the Kiwanis Club because I had a seat in the middle of the bike where Kurt rode, and he was so impressed he wanted me to come and tell the Kiwanis Club about what that was like. I didn't go there for the proposal of raising money, but at the end I told them, we do have this project in mind, and we're $5,000 short, and if you have any ideas, please let me know. Well, on the way back, I had written out there with 3 Kiwanian friends, and on the way back to the university where we all worked, one of them said, well, you know, we've got $10,000 in the bank. We ought to just give you $5,000 to fund it. Wow. And all of them in the car agreed. So they proposed that to the Kiwanis the next week, and they all agreed. But when the treasurer, who was out of town, got back, he had a fit. That they were going to give us that much money. But they did. And so we applied for the grant. And Lou Rossetti, who was on the special education staff at the university, he and I went down to support the proposal. They had a hearing by the committee, and he was very, very helpful. He was a good speaker, and he described everything that we needed to do, and it was very convincing. And so it was apparent that they were going to approve the grant. And as we got ready to leave, one of the members of the committee said, we've been wondering when someone from Kirksville would finally show up down here. You don't have any projects funded. So we were the first one. But it was very successful. That program worked very well, and Sheila was the director. So then we started work with the assistance of the regional staff on building a home for developmentally disabled children. Our big problem was that we had all the plans, we had the staff, we had everything we needed, but we didn't have the down payment. So while we were working on that, one of the wings of the regional center became available, and they offered it to us to use for a home. So that's when we started Chariton Valley. I found this broker out in Colorado who was funding projects and without a down payment. And the way they got by with that is that the state of Missouri, or whatever state they were in, because they were in Colorado, would first make the monthly payment, and then they'd pay what's left to the organization, so that the seller of the bonds knew they were going to get the money each month. So that was wonderful. And so we made the deal and went through all the legal work and all that. Got the loan approved for $300,000. You just never know what problems are going to arise. When we started construction, we found out all they did was fund the construction once the construction was completed. We had to get our own loan to build the darn thing. So fortunately, I was on the bank board down at Macon Atlanta State Bank, and with some security provided by our families, provided the money to build, and then they got paid off when we got the money from the bonding company. So we got the home built, ready to open, as I recall, in '89. And at that time, the director of the regional center retired, Jim Ryan, and Lois Powell was the new director. She came here from over in western Missouri. And when she came to the grand opening, she said, "Well, this place is too big. You've got too many kids in here." And I thought, oh my God, we designed this place to build another one on the other side of the parking lot exactly like this one, so we could do 32. We're no longer funding projects that big. So what a thing to find out at your at your grand opening, that this is the only one. But the state gave us that acre of land. The regional center was located on 10 acres of land. After we had built the home and operated successfully for 3 or 4 years, I contacted Hollister to see if it might be willing to sell us or give us just a few feet so those farm implements wouldn't come quite so close to the house. They came back and said, "Ray, we've been wanting to square up our property here, and we'll just give you 5 acres. Isn't that unbelievable? And so they gave us 5 acres, and that's the land that's now between our 2 office buildings, Chariton Valley office building. We were operating that 16-person home very efficiently, and that's when Crystal Amini-Rod came to work for us, was during that period of time. And she very astutely started new programs. The one where the house where Kurt lives now, that was her idea. And we got that approved by the city, and went to all the neighbors and got their approvals. And so, but that was in 91 or 92, I can't remember which. And Kurt's lived there ever since. And very, very good living condition for my son.
Support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities through the least restrictive alternatives, at home, at work, and in their community. There are many benefits of home and community-based services, including transparency. People are less isolated and safer when services are received in their home community. Inclusive and equitable. People are equally valued. They are included within their community and treated fairly. Equality and self-determination. People have personal freedom and choice. They are assured the right to advocacy, self-advocacy, and due process. Connections. People have increased access to community resources and opportunities. Efficient use of resources. HCBS is cost-effective and generally less expensive than ICF, RCF, and other congregated residential services. Please continue funding and support for home and community-based services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. For more info, contact us at sb40@sb40life.org or call us at 660-665-9400.